Is this thing on?
Hey everybody, it's your pal Anton. We're here for Anton Talks at comiccon.com, your daily slice of comic conventions straight on your screen. I have the amazing privilege today to be hanging out with the incredibly talented Max Dunbar. He is here to talk to me about fantasy art, which is this rad new Zoop art book that he's going to be doing. Zoop is a crowdfunding platform, and I'm super stoked. Hey Max, how are you, man?
I am fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. This is exciting.
It is. Oh, it's super exciting for me, man. I'm a huge fan. I have been for ages. My buddy Bob and we talk about your work probably weekly. I have your Avernus Demons and Devils up on my wall framed.
So cool.
They're in the background of every one of my interviews. So people who've been watching for a while, they'll see them all the time.
That's amazing. That's very flattering. Thank you very much.
You're just a wildly talented human being, and I'm very excited to pick your brain about this new art book.
Yeah.
So this collection, right, is like 10 years, right, worth of work that you sort of pulled together. What sort of is the sort of the inspiration to kind of drop this now? Like where'd that come from?
That is a great question. So it's one of those things that I've been building over time. I've just been sketching for fun, as warm-up sketches, as things to do, just when I have a certain idea and I want to get it on paper. And I've been doing that for a very long time and just compiling all of this art. And once in a while, someone will say, when are you going to do an art book? And so that hopefully people are interested in it. But what got me to do it now is I was working for Wizards of the Coast on a contract basis for the past, say, year or so, and the project that were working on that was taking all my time wrapped up. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't have something immediately to jump onto that would consume all of my time. Working on various freelance projects here and there, but I finally have the time that I think it would take to start looking at this and working on it. So, the Zoop had reached out to me previously. I know Jason Copeland, who is an artist that did Full Tilt with them, really cool sort of neo-noir crime graphic novel. He said they were great to work with as a crowdfunding platform. And so I thought, maybe this is the best time to actually do this after putting it off for so long. So yeah, just decided that I'd pull the trigger and try and release an art book now.
It's awesome. I mean, and it's such a great time. I mean, the world needs kind of that level of inspiration. I know I got the pleasure of talking to Rich Whittards a couple of years ago, and
Oh, yeah.
he's like a hero of mine. His
Mine
creative
too.
outlets are fantastic, and he and I both feel very strongly that your black and white artwork is just it speaks, right? Art's supposed to make you feel something, and for me, and it just sort of it's so evocative. What made you kind of want to make this book? Because this book's entirely black and white, isn't it? Like what
Yeah,
you
I
want to
mean
go
that
about
is the current plan. I have it's going to start off at about 176 pages, and then with stretch goals, if we get enough money that it's funded, then there's additional money. We're just going to add pages because I've got more than enough material. If we reach a certain threshold, it will get colorized, and by colorized I mean all the black and white art will still stay black and white, but there will be the addition of color pieces that I've done. So
very cool.
that will be, there's several illustrations that I've done as commissions, as work for various companies in color. It's not the majority of my work by any means, but I would say there's probably 10 to 15 color pieces that I could include in the book that I think would be pretty cool. So that is an additional thing, but if we just hit the first funding goal, it'll all be black and white.
That's awesome, man. And like I love the way the black and the white artworks looks. For me, it's one of those things where like this is probably a little too fanboy, but like this is what we do at the D&D table. Like when your work hits Instagram
Yeah.
or like one of the social platforms, like my buddy Bob and I'll take pictures and like, I'll zoom in on this and we'll, oh, look at this little detail here on like the pommel of the sword or like check out this like cool little face that's hiding sort of in this.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it's
Yeah.
the details that you put in there and they're so beautiful and like it always feels like there's this for us, for me as an observer, it feels like there's this through line of sort of a deeper lore or a lived in thing. There's not like an empty space in the work you're doing. Do you feel like there's a through line that's connecting the work that's in, other than it just being your work in this fantasy sort of book? Do you feel like there's a through line or something that like sort of knits all of these together? Or is it just sort of, this is my rad work I've been doing? Like, how's that play?
That is super cool that you point that out because that is like something that as an artist in my own bubble like everyone else is, I have no idea if people like appreciate the little tiny weird things that I like to put into the artwork and the character details. For me, that's what I love too, seeing in other people's artwork. Because especially with tabletop RPGs and D&D in particular, the idea that you're sort of traveling through a world of some kind and accumulating things and things are being crafted, or you're taking things off of some ancient entity or finding stuff in a long forgotten tomb or dungeon. Having these things all have like a name and a history that you may or may not know about really speaks to me too. And so, yeah, putting like a little, demon face on a pauldron or a piece of armor or a sword hilt or something like that. I like to evoke that sort of idea that maybe there's more to this than you're going to get in this one snapshot. Maybe if you were playing with this character, that's a sentient piece of armor or a cursed or enchanted weapon of some kind. So there isn't like a conscious story that I put into it. I love lore and I love storytelling that is actually written down. But for me, I like to maybe leave it up to the person viewing it. If I ever decide to, use some of these characters in a comic book or a story of some kind, then I like to think that I would dive down and start designing, some actual story behind this stuff. But for now, it's all left up to the sort of viewer's imagination.
It's so much fun. I remember reading like the Magica Encyclopedia and like the
Ooh,
old Fiend folios and like some of the
yeah,
especially 3.0, 3.5 era of D&D as well, coming from an AD&D setting. Those, you get some of that art and it would just be like, I don't know what this is. What does this mask do?
yeah,
There've never been any stats for it or anything. So like as a storyteller, as a world builder, that one little piece, whether it's the demon face on the pauldron or the familiar that looks a little too aware. You're not sure what they're
yeah.
up to. Like there's always that sort of lore. So the fact you bake that in, I think, really brings like an authenticity and a lived inness to your work. That makes me really happy that you think about that stuff. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, the other thing, and going to the lived in thing, is yeah, like again, they're these fantasy characters. I want them to look like they've been walking along a path for a while, or they've been like delving dungeons. Like, what would you take with you? Like, what would you have on your belt? You're not just gonna have your sword. I love all types of fantasy art, but one thing that is sort of like a pet peeve of mine is when you see like an adventurer that looks super clean. They've got like, a sword and nothing else. It's like, well, if you get thirsty, where's your canteen or your water skin or if you're sitting around the campfire, do you have like a pipe that you like to pull out and or like a little whittling knife or something like that? And so I feel like those little touches can really add a lot to a character. Sometimes I probably go too far and just have them like laden down with stuff, but it's fun to get carried away with that stuff too. It's like I'm not going for realism. That's just not my particular style. So I like to maybe go too far the other way where they're carrying half a library with them. But it's fun. It's really fun to do that kind of stuff.
As somebody who's been a storyteller since the late 90s, right? Since I was in single digits as a little kid, I've never met a party that didn't carry anything that wasn't nailed down. So the
Totally.
fact
Yeah. I
that
mean, my character is basically a hoarder at this point. Like he's
right.
got all sorts of gross stuff that he carries around. So I like to, on some level, imbue that across all characters, but maybe they're not quite as disgusting as my personal Dungeons and Dragons character, but depending on what they do, they might be.
I love that, man. That makes me so happy. And like, so when these pieces were sort of, coming together, was there anything that you put into this book that was like, this is especially exciting for me? Like, I love that I'm being able to include this, or like, I'm kind of nervous to put this piece in here. Like, was there anything sort of from your body of work that's going into this book that like has a sentimental meaning or has like, was sort of trepidatious for you as you were putting it in?
Yeah, that's such a good question. There's stuff that I'm definitely excited about putting in because there's stuff that I've never shown anyone because it's been for work. Uh, I just haven't been able to show it, but I've talked to Reaper Miniatures. I've done a lot of work for and a lot of concept art. And so there's quite a few things for them that I've never shown that they're allowing me to put in this book. Various illustrations and concept art. Um, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's like personal to me because it might be from just my something that I felt like drawing that day. It might be from a project that never took off. I remember a ways back, me, Adam Lee, and Jim Zub. Adam Lee, who worked for Dungeons and Dragons, and then Jim Zub, the comic book writer. We were pitching a an official Dungeons and Dragons comic book that never got off the ground. But I have some character designs for that I've shown, a couple years ago. But being able to have them sort of featured in the book where you can look over the various notes that I've made and the early sketches and that kind of stuff, which I never showed anyone. Um, that's going to be cool. And that's also a little nerve-wracking to include sort of prelim work or sketches that I wasn't happy with that required a second round of drawing or third round of drawing. But I think it's really cool to show process when you can. I always love seeing other artists' scrapped work or work that they, maybe built the foundation of a character, but they felt like it needed another round of details, so they went and tried again. So I'm including stuff like that in the book, so you can see the process.
I love that, man. And speaking of Jim Zub, that I've recently interviewed him about his Conan work, and
Yeah,
he's a guy that I've followed for ages. And Conan is sort of one of those things I read as a little kid, because just tabletop role playing games were sort of my, being disabled, I can't really kick a ball or play sports or whatever.
sure, yeah.
But like at the table, rolling dice and sort of the theater of the mind was a way for me to be equal, sort of with everybody else. It was the that level playing ground of play, and those Conan stories, H.P. Lovecraft, Princess of Mars, like those sort of pulp books,
Yeah.
or Dragonlance. Those things really inspired me, like as a kid, and kind of helped me build my mind and sort of where I was going storytelling wise. Do you have any kind of like inspiration that kind of got you on the path that you're on now? Like, where do you draw sort of your passion for all of this from? Was there anything that kind of set that spark ablaze?
Yeah, so for me, the tabletop RPG stuff, I wasn't aware of, and I never got into them until much later in my life. I think I had seen probably ads in a comic book or something like that for Dungeons and Dragons or other tabletop RPGs, but my friend circle wasn't really into that type of stuff, so I never got exposed to it, unfortunately, because I think that would have had a huge influence on me. So I would say the number one thing was probably movies when I was younger.
Oh yeah.
Like fantasy movies were pretty limited, but I know that like Willow and The Princess Bride were two huge movies for me, especially Willow. Um, I think just that sort of dark fantasy um, aesthetic in that, you've got some pretty like hopeless and scary the monsters are terrifying. I mean, the
Horrifying.
troll, the ugliest dragon I've ever seen in my life in a good way. Um, and then yeah, like you've got great characters in that. You've got a really terrifying villain, and then Mad Mardigan is obviously like sort of your quintessential awesome roguish character. So I think that was just a massive influence on me. And I didn't even really think about that being a huge influence on me until I rewatched the movie after not seeing it for years. And I was like, oh wow, this clearly had like a huge impact on me creatively. So that was kind of interesting to revisit it after not really thinking about it in that way for a long time. And then yeah, The Princess Bride was another fantasy movie that I watched umpteen times when I was a kid. And then other than that, it would probably be comic books in general. But again, fantasy comic books weren't a huge thing in my life when I was younger. Battle Chasers, I was a huge fan of. Um, but that was more because I was a big Joe Mad fan than a fantasy fan. So I think the fantasy thing sort of crept up on me over time, and then I sort of really got into it in a big way, right around maybe just before I started working on the Dungeons and Dragons comic book, which I did with Jim Zub. So that's kind of full circle there. But then I started really sort of learning more about D&D and really getting into that genre. And yeah, ever since then, which that was quite a long time ago, let's say 2014. Um, I've been working and doing fantasy stuff ever since.
I love that, man. And it's wild because I feel like one of the first pieces I saw from you was probably on Twitter back when I still had a Twitter account, or
Yeah,
I
I don't
started.
have it either,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
But it was something that invoked Lord Kale. Like it was that skull helmet that he has from Willow, and like
Yeah.
I just because Willow was a very formative movie for me. Like it was one of my
Oh, cool. Yeah.
coming up, it was one of my favorite movies. Like because I have always been sort of seeped in the fantasy not the high fantasy is great, but like that more like commonplace fantasy.
Yeah.
So interesting that you call that out. That makes me really happy. And then anything Joe Mad touches, yeah, I cried when the new Battle Chasers dropped those new issues. Like or we just got the Darksiders 4 announcement. Like I was
Yeah.
beside myself because the Darksiders games, they're my favorite just from this world building and the way he designs everything.
Incredible.
It's
Yeah.
incredible. Chaos Eater is
Yeah.
my favorite fantasy weapon of all time. It's that like
Yeah. It's so
art.
cool.
It's so
I can't,
cool.
I have, all of those Darksider art books, and like you look through them, and I can only look through like 10 pages before I'm like, I have to put this down and start drawing because like it's so inspirational and so awesome that his work is incredible. Yeah, he's a singular talent. There's no one else quite like him. So he's yeah, an art hero for sure.
For sure, man. So it makes me really happy that you kind of have that same through line. That's awesome. And you've kind of created your own iconic characters, right? Because you've worked in D&D, you've worked for Critical Role, Hero Quest, right? I was on a call with Mr.
Yeah.
Manganello talking about kind of the
Oh,
expansions
cool.
a couple months back. We were kind of doing the one of the announcements, and you've worked on stuff there. Is there any sort of that work, like the dragon, or is there anything from those sort of pieces that are also going to be in this art book that you sort of pulled from?
Yeah, so with the Hero Quest stuff, I actually am still waiting to hear back from them on whether or not it's okay for me to include in my art book. Because sometimes you don't want to get in trouble for including anything that they might have ownership of and might have a problem putting in your the art book. So that to me will be like bonus content if I am able to, or maybe in a future book. Because I've got so much stuff that I don't actually need that stuff, but it would be really cool to include it one day. But yeah, very nice of you to say any of that stuff is iconic. I just have such a blast. Working on all of those things. I feel very fortunate to be able to dip my toe in that sort of universe. And I will say that I did reach out to Joe Manganello and asked him if I could include the work I've done with him. Um, I've done some. I didn't design the visuals for Arcan the Cruel, but I've done some artwork of him for Joe. I also did help design some of his secondary characters, like Krull, the Tortle cleric, and there's some other characters that I helped design. So some of that work will be included
Awesome.
in the book. Yeah.
That's so cool, man. And like you do have, every so often I like when you get started on these sort of big character pieces that are like it seems like every day or every couple of days we're adding this new, you get a turtle and then you get a tiefling and then you get like sort of a hag and then like goblin is there, you kind of run
Yeah.
this gamut. You're not locked into a certain character design, but is for you. I love your orcs. I think they're fantastic.
Thank you.
They're
Thank you.
they feel real, right? They feel very like they're different. None of them feel, they're similar in the sense that like you can look at them all together and be like, oh, they come from the same place. But they don't feel
Yeah.
like cookie cutter minion, right? You give them such a life. But for you, is there any sort of like what do you like to draw when you're just having your druthers and you're doing it, I'm just gonna have fun. Like what is your
Yeah.
preferred thing to kind of sit down at the table and go to town with?
Well, that's funny that you mentioned orcs because orcs are probably my number one that I enjoy drawing.
Let's see.
It took me a while to sort of settle on what I like and what I want my particular, brand in quotes of orc to look like. Because they're a creature that everyone has a certain different interpretation of. There's various through lines to them that the big tusks tend to get used more often than not. And those are things that I love about them. I would say mine probably have more in common with sort of the Warcraft orcs. That's probably the heaviest inspiration for them. But yeah, I sort of wanted to take that and then mix it with sort of making them more like a Germanic barbarians rather than sort of like a savage like sort of caveman style that you'll see a lot of times. So like yeah, like ornate armor sometimes, like crafted weapons and whatnot. Um, I wanted them to look like they had skills in making things and their own culture that's just as valuable as anyone else's. They just happen to come from a warrior culture, and might have an aggressive fighting style. But so orcs are number one, probably. Dwarves are going to be really high up there. I just love drawing dwarves, making crazy ornate braids and the exaggerated features are what I really like leaning into, which again is probably like born from playing so much World of Warcraft back in the day. Um, Anything really where it has a distinct silhouette. You mentioned those pieces of the D&D parties or the character compilations where it's like adding one per day or I just love that, yeah, you can have a variety of different um sizes and shapes of characters and then trying to tie them all together so they all look like they come from the same world is a really fun challenge.
It's awesome, man. And then I think it's cool that you call in Germanic for the orcs because I've always referred to them as the 13th warrior orcs. So it feels
Oh
like
yeah,
they
cool.
live in that like Bolvide space. You could see an elven sort of adventurer joining this party of
Yeah,
your orcs, and it makes complete sense in sort of that dynamic, right? It's very
totally.
sort of strong and like Nordic living in sort of that icy, unfamiliar land. So it's very rad. Also, Hoarder Alliance when you were playing, I've got to know. Like I've always,
Okay,
no
so
judgment.
yeah, okay, as long as there's no judgment,
No,
because I have judgment on myself, because I was Alliance. I think if I was to play now, I would definitely go Horde because I'd want to play as an orc. But back in the day, I'm gonna blame my buddy who got me into the game. He already was Alliance, and I wanted to play, in the same party as him. So my highest level character was a boring human paladin, but
there's nothing wrong with
I
that.
live with the regret. I live with the regret every day. But
And I played a Shank and Plank alley human for a long time. Uh,
that's cool.
but my heart has always lived with the trolls because I just love their culture
Yeah.
and they look, man. It's that silhouette. It comes back to that like
Yep.
that
The
visual,
trolls,
the way they sit, and yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's so much.
That game, I mean like Blizzard when they were like, just crushing it when it came to bringing out games that everyone was obsessed with. Um there's a lot that you can learn from just great character design when it came to those games because I can still picture, the way the undead players, their characters run, but they've got this crazy hunched over posture, and it really sells it. And
Yeah.
I always thought that looked really cool. The fact that every, the trolls, the orcs, they all had a different like standard mount. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, I mean the trolls were such a cool character design, so unique. Um, that's awesome. Yeah, if I was to play again, which I won't because I can't get sucked back in. I'd probably go orc.
Yeah, it's funny that you say you can't. I literally less than an hour ago, I'm lucky enough to manage a very talented artist, and she and I were talking
Oh, cool.
as she was driving, and she was like, I want to just take a couple of weeks and do, just play games. Because all she's doing is deadlines and this, and she's like,
Yeah.
what if we got back into WoW for like a couple? And I'm like, dude, I can't. There's no. I was leading raids, man. I was,
Yeah.
that it was a full-time job back when my work.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not. I can't do it. I can't put the prophetic needle back in the arm. I have too much work to
Yeah, I
do,
just
man.
don't think it's something you can just casually dip into because they designed that game so well to keep you wanting to come back and wanting to
Sure.
achieve more and get more stuff and kill more, monsters and stuff. I don't think I could casually play it. I think it would and I just can't do it. Like my life is I don't the 2 weeks off to play games sounds like heaven to me. Like that's such a good idea, and if I could pull it off, I absolutely would. All I can say is maybe sometime in the future I'll do that because
Right.
the Steam list is so long. I'll just buy a game and never play it because one day I'll play it, but it hasn't happened for years, so maybe it will someday.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I completely understand that sentiment. Before we wrap, uh, I'm super excited about Fantasy Art. I think it's going to be a fantastic book. I think anybody who's
Thank
listening,
you.
watching us, should pick it up. If somebody is not familiar with their work, and I don't know if they've, living under a rock, but if somebody's not familiar with your
That's
work,
hilarious.
what would you give them as like a little blurb pitch of like, hey, pick this up because it's rad. How would you explain that to somebody in like a very elevator way to get them excited about this book?
Yeah, so the book is going to be 176 plus pages. We'll go more if we hit those stretch goals of traditional black and white with gray tones for the most part. Fantasy art. So it's just going to be focused on the art. I'm going like full page. I'm not going to cover the page in text or backstory or anything like that. It's just going to be focused on the art. And it's just pages and pages of different characters. I've got some concept art in there from various different, from working on my time in Dungeons and Dragons on the comic books. I've got illustrations that I've done that are a little bit more finished, but the vast majority of it is just going to be characters of every type, orcs, elves, humans, hags, goblins, whatever, and just intricately designed and drawn. So if you like looking at, traditional artwork, pencil, ink, and marker, this will just be pages and pages of that.
That's amazing, man. I think it's gonna be rad, and I really appreciate your time. And hopefully we get to talk again soon. Maybe when the book
Yeah,
drops, we
that
have
would be
another
great.
conversation. That'll be tons of
That'd
fun. But for now,
be
we're
fantastic.
gonna sign off, and I'll see you hopefully really soon. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.